Native American cultures are different across tribes, but can be grouped geographically because many tribes share characteristics within a region. Anthropologists have divided and grouped Native American tribes into many geographically, linguistically, and culturally based regions. Native Americans have lived in the Americas for thousands of years, long before European settlers arrived. Their interactions with Europeans, beginning in the 15th century, tell a story of oppression, disease, and massive loss of population. Indigenous groups of North and Central America are grouped into 12 geography-based regions: the Arctic, Subarctic, Northwest, Plateau, California, Great Basin, Plains, Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, Mesoamerica, and Caribbean regions.
Utes is a Numic-speaking group of North American Indians. Utes has a southern region and a northern region. The Ute people are the oldest tribe in Colorado, living in the mines and other places in Colorado. Their environment shaped the Ute people as they developed creative ways of exploiting its diverse altitude ranges, plants, and animals on a seasonal basis.
The earliest known interaction with Europeans was with Juan Maria de Rivera, who explored the region in 1765. After that, their lives were never the same. The Utes had their own religion. They danced, played games, and told stories. Also, during annual ceremonies, they would hunt for food for the season. The Ute Indians usually lived in a cone-shaped hut made for small families.
They currently live in the western slope of Colorado, part of eastern Utah, and a part of New Mexico.
The Ute feed on the hunting of deer and buffalo. They also feed on the collection of wild plants and fruit, also eat insects like grasshoppers. The Ute men were hunters and warriors.
Ute women would take care of children, did most of the housework, and they also made clothes.
The men were the tribe leaders. The Ute and the Navajo were at war with the Hopi tribe before ever encountering Europeans. The Spanish and the Ute had their first conflict in 1637 to 1641. Spaniards under Luis de Rosas captured about 80 Ute tribe members and forced them into labor in Santa Fe. Spanish explorer Silvestre Velez de Escalante was trespassing through Ute territory in 1776 while looking for a pass from Santa Fe to California.
The Ute community as a whole did not have a central political identity. Only their identity has been part of the groups consulted wise men and women.
The Powhatans are Native American people in Virginia. The tribe fiercely resisted the English colonists' invasion of their homeland, which led to a series of war and conflict. Powhatans were also known as Virginian Algonquins, as they spoke in a form of Eastern Algonquin.
The Powhatans lived in a small round house called wigwams, which could be described as larger Iroquois longhouses. The wigwams were palisaded with log walls. There were also food storage buildings and council houses.
The Powhatan's religious beliefs guided everyday life. There were many spirits the Powhatan worshipped, Oki being the most prominent. There are also other spirits such as a Honi, an anonymous female spirit, and even the sun. The tribe's offerings are comprised of deer blood and food. Powhatans also attempt to connect with the spirit world via dance. The shaman helps with connecting to the spirit world as well as other traditions. Food was no problem for the Powhatans as they were familiar with agriculture and hunting. Women of the tribe knew how to plant corn, squash, and beans. The men were also more centered on hunting, specifically deer, turkeys, fish, and small game. These were usually served in the form of soup, cornbread, and stews. As previously mentioned, the tribe had a good understanding of hunting and agriculture. They had the ability to make bows and arrows for hunting and tomahawks and shields. The Powhatans are also known for their basketry and beadwork. They also created wampum belts, which had cultural importance, as the designs either told a story or represented one's family. When the English arrived, the Powhatans saw them as potential allies, but after an ill-conceived attempt to have Powhatan work under one of their men, they attempted to starve the colonists and even going as far as to kill anybody who left the boundaries of their colony. The Powhatans had war often with the colonists and other tribes. In the 17th century, Chief Powhatan united various Virginia tribes to create the Powhatan Confederacy, not with the intent of subjugating the other tribes, but to create a union. This allowed tribes to provide mutual support, and taxes were paid to Powhatan in the form of food, copper, and animal furs. The tribes of the Confederacy were the first to make contact with Europeans and the first to take action. Powhatan interactions with Europeans were not generally positive. When Europeans first arrived, the Powhatans were willing to trade with them, but after Chief Powhatan received an offer to operate under them, he decided to try and kill the colonists with starvation and other methods. Tensions then grew when colonists extorted food from the other tribe, ultimately leading to the Powhatans' displacement despite improved relations between 1614 and 1617.
The Potawatomi tribe speak Algonquin. They were people who lived in Wisconsin in the Northeast. The tribe name meant people of the place of fire in many different languages. There is only two types of houses for the Potawatomi people to live in, and they were called wigwams and longhouses. Potawatomi villages also had sweat lodges, meat drying huts, and both fields.
The women planted and harvested corn and collected wild plants for food, while the men hunted and fished. The Potawatomis tapped trees for maple syrup.
One of the most interesting parts of the Potawatomi is their religion. The person who is considered to be the founder is Bana Bazo. The Potawatomi participated in a religious cult. The religion of the Potawatomi was similar to the Algonquian people. The Potawatomi has slowly started to move west since the arrival of Europeans. This caused them to pick up habits from other cultures. There were a couple of native Potawatomi people that refused to leave their land until the U.S. military forced the remaining of the Potawatomi people out of India. In the 16th century, the Potawatomi people settled along Lake Michigan, next to the Ottawa and Chippewa tribes. Them being neighbors and having similar cultures and languages caused them to form an alliance called the Council of the Three Fires.
The Potawatomi were skilled in fishing, hunting, and farming.
The Potawatomi people were separated into many political independent territorial groups that were connected by kinship and language. Big portions of land was claimed and taken away from the Potawatomi people in the 19th century by the U.S. government. People from different clans in Potawatomi tribe married so that different bands of the tribe would join together.
The Potawatomi were close friends with the Ottawas, Ojibwe, and the Ojibwe, but it got really crowded with the European settlers staying there.
The geography of Carib people is tremendously large. There are many islands. In fact, there is more than 7,000 islands. What these islands include are islets, cays, and a few inhabited reefs. In Carib territories, there are the Antilles. The Lesser Antilles are part of the Antilles. Most of Carib territories is volcanic in origin. There are many volcanoes that are still active. Many mountains ranges stretch across Carib territories, mainly in Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago. Lots of rainforests are found across the Carib, with those on Dominica and Jamaica the most prominent. Most of the islands of Carib people contain coral reefs. In fact, the Carib is home to about 9% of the world's coral reefs. Small lakes and rivers are scattered across the Carib. The largest lake in the Carib is Lake Enriquillo in the Dominican Republic. The most longest river on a Carib island is in Cuba. The major bodies of water in the Carib are the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and to a smaller extent the Gulf of Mexico. Carib people mainly speak 59 languages, 22 Indigenous and Amerindian languages, which includes 10 Carib, including Carib, 7 Arabic, 2 Tupi, 3 Mayan, all spoken in the continental Caribbean. 5 European languages 21 Creole languages, which includes 15 English lexicon, 4 French lexicon, 1 Barbarian lexicon, and 1 Dutch lexicon on the verge of extinction, mostly in the insular Caribbean. 4 immigrant languages that came with their speakers during the mid-19th century post-emancipation, 4 sign languages, and 3 unclassified languages.
Carib homes were small, brown straw huts. Due to their warm climate, they didn't need insulation. The important thing was privacy. Their homes were constructed from wooden frames, covered reeds, and palm fronds. They slept in hammocks. Caribs were very lucky people, especially when it came to stopping hunger. The Caribs were fishers, hunters, and farmers, but only when they needed to. They fished fish, and crabs, hunted birds and game, and farmed fruits and veggies. Since they lived in tropical areas, these resources were very easy to preserve, but they were also cannibals, meaning they ate human flesh.
Like most people, the Caribs also had a religion. They believed they were polytheists. They also believed in an evil spirit called Maiboya. They also practiced shamanism. The job of shamans was to heal the sick with herbs, which would help keep the Maiboya at bay. Since shamans were the only people who could keep the Maiboya and evil away, they were treated with great respect. The Kalingo practiced by the Caribs, the Taino and Caribs had similar worships. Just like everyone else, the Caribs also have their skills and accomplishments. They were most popular for their reeds, basketry, gourd carvings, and pottery.
The Caribs were strong fighting people, but when Columbus landed on the territory, things got ugly. Columbus and the Caribs were immediately at odds. The Caribs suffered a lot from his European colonists. These European colonists were very, very rude. They belittled the Caribs' work, effort, and accomplishments, as well as spread false information about them. After a few but fierce battles, Columbus left the land, but still had the audacity to name them. He named them the Cannibal. After that, other tribes referred to them as the Caritiba, which meant where fierce cannibal warriors live. Just like geography and language, the political and cultural view is very interesting. Now with the Caribs, you would think that they have a very complex and organized governmental system, right? Well, let me tell you that that thought is wrong. You see, the Carib nation never really thought about a governmental system. They still had their setups on who was leader. The leader was also always chosen by a religious leader. Once they were chosen, they were officially known as a chief or cacique. The leader was usually a son or male nephew of the previous leader. Culture, on the other hand, was very important. More than half of the historical narrative culture is about their aggressive and warlike characteristics. This changed modern Caribs and challenged some anthropologists. In fact, cannibalism was also a spiritual act that connected deeply with warriors and war rituals. The way this works is that warriors would eat a chunk of their enemy's flesh to assume their characteristics. I know what you're thinking, ill, but this was very common with Caribs. They also collected the limbs of their enemies as trophies. But that's not all. A huge tradition was collecting their ancestors' bones and placing them in their homes. An interesting spiritual belief was that if you collected physical remains, it could be used to harvest residual powers. The Taino and Caribs entitled themselves as polytheists. What that meant is that they believed in natural spirits and practiced shamanism. Shamans took a very special training. Being shaman was so important you were no longer allowed to be a warrior. Shamans were the only people who could rule out evil, who were also treated with great respect. As a matter of fact, every ceremony always held some type of sacrifice. Tobacco also played a large role in religious rites.
The Aztec Empire was in the Valley of Mexico, which was in the mountains of central Mexico. In this valley, the Aztecs called themselves the Mexico. The Valley of Mexico provided natural defense and had all the features needed for the development of a civilization. The valley has many lakes. The lakes were briny and salty. The Aztecs learned how to make dams so that the fresh water would flow down the mountain and to keep the salt water separate. The capital, Tenochtitlan, was in the middle of Lake Texcoco. It was 580 square miles large, which was a good natural defense. As early as 680, languages known as Nahuatl were spoken by people in the area. The Aztec Triple Alliance was three city-states against the city-state of Azcapotzalco. The alliance between the three city-states was forged in 1427. In 1426, The king of Azcapotzalco died in the ensuing feud of succession. The city of Tenochtitlan went to war with Azcapotzalco. The city-states of Talocopan and Texcoco sided with Tenochtitlan, and together the three city-states defeated Azcapotzalco. Hernan Cortes and his company reached the island of San Juan de Ulua on the coast of the Aztec province of now present Veracruz on April 20, 1519. Soon after, the Spaniards began exchanging messages with the ruler of Moctezuma Xocoyotzin in Mexico. From his interpreter Geronimo Aguilar and Maltinzin Tenpal, Cortes gained valuable information about the politics of the region, which he used to establish key political alliances necessary for achieving his goals. Language and knowledge thus became central to the Spanish Empire building efforts in the lands dominated by the Aztecs. The ancient Aztec government didn't rule on an empire in the way we often think of the world. They conquered land but left certain amount of freedom. Warriors made small attacks on surrounding people and took some as prisoners which would then be sacrificed. Houses were built on a similar pattern in the empire. The sizes of the house were determined by the classes. Poorer classes had smaller houses, and the higher classes had bigger houses. Some houses would have flat pole roofs, others had peak roofs. It was common for houses to be built on the ground. Some were built on a platform. The platform houses were close to 2 feet off the ground, usually of a wattle and daub construction, usually using wood as a braid, dirt, clay, and sand mixture. The Aztecs' diet consists of corn, chilies, tomatoes, limes, cashews, potatoes, sweet potatoes, peanuts, and chocolate. They domesticated bees for honey and turkey for meat and eggs, also dogs and ducks. They fished and hunted and used animals for food. They harvested grasshoppers and worms. In the Aztec Empire, girls were taught how to run a home, cook, and care for a family. They were also taught things like crafts and ways to economically run the home. Boys learned how to trade and were also taught fighting skills and leadership skills. Aztecs made what's called the Aztec calendar. The calendar is a brilliant combination of art and geometry. It reflects the Aztec understanding of the time and space. The detailed surface of the stone combines the understanding of gods the people had created over the centuries, as well as their observations of the heavens. Ancient Aztec religion consists of interactions of gods, dates, directions, and colors. Most of the preoccupation had to do with fear of the end of the world. It took the gods 5 tries to create the world. The Aztec religion was focused on keeping nature in balance. They believed that one false step could lead to natural disaster. Prophecies were a part of the ancient Aztec religion. Many scholars believe that Aztec people thought that the conqueror Hernan Cortes was their god hero.
The Mayan civilization was located in what is now Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, and a few Mexican cities. Mayan civilization had more than 40 cities, each population of in between 5,000 and 50,000. Some cities included Tikal, Ucatan, Copan, Dos Pilas, and many more. The Mayans didn't speak a specific language. The language and dialect that they spoke was determined by the area or region they lived in. But classic Mayan civilizations were Cholan speakers, and this language was influenced on other Mayan language and non-Mayan neighbors. The religion of the Mayans was at the heart of everything they did. The Mayans believed that God lived everywhere, but especially in heaven. The Mayan people also believed in the underworld. This was the place of awe. This was also a place where demons lived. When the priests had their religious ceremonies, they wore masks and they dressed up to look stronger and more powerful than the demons. Gonzalo Guerrero was the man who joined the Mayans to help resist the Spanish rule in Yucatan. To help, he dressed up as a Mayan by tattooing his face, piercing his ears, and marrying a Mayan woman. By doing this, he became one with the Mayans, who were enemies with the Spaniards. The Mayan boys learned the basic hunting skills from a young age. The women collected berries, tuber, and other natural foods. Husbands would dig and plow a field with
with special tools. The wives would follow behind their husbands, sowing seeds or collecting the harvested items. Agriculture was a collective effort, especially during harvest. The Mayans discovered the concept of zero way before Europeans did. The Mayans figured out how to make an accurate calendar, and they also invented a writing system. Only 4 other cultures ever did that. Mayans also invented things that many of us like nowadays, like chocolate and basketball.
The Mayans' living environment
Consisted
consists of several buildings together or compounds. Households were very large, almost like a maze. Some compounds consisted of steam baths and shrines. A shrine is a place that the Mayans would go and worship the gods. They believed in there could also be objects or artifacts that would represent the gods or person they worshiped. The Mayans did use some
furniture.
such as plant forms as pets.
Archaeologists
Have found ring holes that could been used to separate rooms such as the living room and sleeping area.
The Mayans used many sources and methods to collect their food. One method was the slash and burn agriculture. The slash and burn agriculture is the process of which forest land is chopped down and any vegetation is burned. The ashes from the fire create a very fertilized and nutrient soil to then grow better crops. They also did a hunting-gathering system that then led to the growth of crops like corn, beans, and squash. The Mayans hunted wild turkey, deer, ducks, and even monkeys. They also fished and ate bird eggs.
Like North and Central America, South American indigenous groups have been clustered by historians and anthropologists based on common characteristics, most significantly by language. There are 6 South American regions, beginning with the Caribbean region extending south from North America. The other 5 regions are Amazonia, the Andes, Gran Chaco, Pampas and Patagonia, and Tierra del Fuego at the southernmost tip of the continent.
The Incas lived in various types of rough lands, consisting of the Andes Mountains, the coastline deserts, and the Amazon jungle. Also, the Incas spoke a language called Quechua. Quechua is a today Latin American language. 10 countries of Latin America speak Quechua, but only 3 have it as an official language. The Incas lived in rectangular-shaped houses and built using rocks and concrete with thatched roofing. These houses usually consisted of one room.
The Incas ate many types of food. Some fruits were sour cherries, custard pineapples, elderberries, cactus fruits, pineapples, and a type of banana which is platanos. Some Incas fishermen usually hoped to catch anchovies, sardines, tuna, salmon, and sea bass, and shellfish also. Something people usually ate daily were potatoes.
The Inca tribe was based on ceremonies, nature, practices, animistic beliefs in the 16th century. The Inca people believed in a god called Viracha, who was a culture hero and creator of earth. They made human sacrifices as part of their religion.
In the Inca War, the 2 brothers Huáscar and Atachulapa fought over the throne in the Inca Empire. The Inca War followed Huayna Capic's death, even though he saw himself as a rightful leader. Atachulapa proved himself to be superior to his brother Huáscar.
Incas were good at engineering and making medicine. They were skilled in science and arts. They tended to adopt the special skills of the states that they had conquered. The Incas were also good at building.
The Inca government was ruled by a monarchy by a single leader. They promoted peace to his citizens. There was ruthless punishment to the people who didn't follow their commands.
The Incas were attacked by a European named Pizarro. Pizarro fought the Incas for some of the resources they had. Pizarro fought the Incas and the Incas fought back. Sadly, the Incas were losing power and eventually lost, giving Pizarro full power over them.